tonight, where we continue to bring authors and new books to you in the comfort of your own home. Please note that closed captioning is available for today's program. Click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and select Enable Transcript. You can also purchase your own copy of tonight's featured book. Not sure if it's picking up, just like Jesse Owens, by following the link we will put in the chat window. And audience members, you will also have an opportunity tonight to ask your own questions. And you will ask those questions by typing them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you see a question that you wanted to ask and it's already there, you can bump it up by clicking the thumbs up button. And just a note of our run of show tonight, the ambassador will be here and taking questions in the earlier part of our event. So if you have questions specifically for him, go ahead and ask them at the start and we'll have a short Q&A. He does need to leave early for a personal matter, and then we'll continue on with Paula. And then we'll have another chance at the end for more questions. So our guests of honor tonight are Ambassador Andrew Young and Paula Young Shelton. Ambassador Andrew Young was a close friend and advisor of Martin Luther King Jr. and later became the first African-American congressperson to represent the Deep South since Reconstruction. He promoted human rights around the world as the United States ambassador to the United Nations and continues to build global equality through the Andrew J. Young Foundation. Paula Young Shelton is an early childhood educator with nearly 30 years of experience teaching young children. She is the author of the acclaimed children's book, Child of the Civil Rights Movement, a Bank Street College of Education Best Children's Book of the Year. All right, I'm going to turn this over to you now, Paula and Ambassador. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you. And do I start first?
Yeah, Daddy, why don't you tell them why you decided
let me say
tell
that
this story.
This is for me an 86-year-old story because I first heard it when I was 4 years old. That was in 1936 in New Orleans, Louisiana. And the reason I got this story was that I lived 50 yards from the headquarters of the Nazi Party. And I was walking past there with my father, and he was trying to, he was trying to explain to me why they were hiling Hitler and why there was this big swastika flying over this place. And he decided to say that these are white supremacists, but you don't need to understand that. You know that God made of one blood all the nations of the earth, see? But I kept asking questions, and it ended up with him taking me to the movies in a segregated theater in 1936. But I saw Jesse Owens run in the 1936 Olympics. And Hitler refused to give him his medal after he won. And, but my father said that Hitler did not get mad. I mean, that Jesse Owens didn't get mad. He didn't even pay any attention to what Hitler was doing. His job was to win 3 more gold medals if he could. And he said, you see, Jesse Owens understands that you don't get mad, you get smart. And when I went to see the movie, it was very clear that Hitler got angry, but Jesse Owens kept on and won literally 4 gold medals and broke some world records. Now, I think that story has stuck with me all my life. It made me want to be a runner. And I was on Howard University's track team. I wasn't all that good, but I was good enough. And yet, when I began to work with Martin Luther King, the idea of don't get mad, get smart was for me a kind of mantra. And I never, well, I think I can say this in front of Paula. I don't think she's ever seen me lose my temper, even with my children or my wife or anybody else. And I think that is why I think this story is so important. Because in all of the tensions and volatility of today's world, it's important that we stay cool and we stay rational and we let the best of us come forward wherever we are and whatever we're doing and whatever age we are. So I turned 90 in March, and I still try not to get mad, but get smart. And most of the time, in fact, almost all of the time, I succeed. In fact, other people get mad at me because I won't get mad. Thank you, Paula, for writing this out.
I think I can testify to the fact that you always really keep your cool, and it's very difficult to get you, really upset about something. And I know that you've been in a lot of very tense situations. And, one thing I enjoyed about this story was you talking about the kids that you grew up with and how negotiating with those kids in your neighborhood, this very diverse group, really prepared you.
Well, we not only had a Nazi party on one corner,
right.
We had an Irish grocery store, we had an Italian bar, and we had a Chevrolet dealership around the fourth corner. So I was right in the middle. It's almost like I was born into my vocation. I was in the middle of the United Nations before the United Nations existed.
And tell me about some of your early negotiations, because I remember you telling the story about how you, when you were walking to school and the bullies would try to take your lunch money or something like that.
Well, I always, I always tried to take the initiative. I spoke to people before they spoke to me. And if you walk around like you're afraid, but I would engage. And it was hard because I started in public schools at 6 years old, but I started in third grade. So I was 6 and everybody else was 9 through 12. Well, it works. I remember when Paula first went to elementary school and she said, "Daddy, nobody likes me. They keep pulling on my hair." And I said, "Paula," I said, "that's the way boys say they like you." And I said, "Why don't you just speak to everybody as soon as you get in, learn their names and call them by names and speak to them and see if that makes a difference." Well, that made a big difference, I think. And I always say, but by all means, the most important person in your classroom is your teacher. And whether it's in elementary school or high school or in the university, know your professor's name or your teacher's name and say good morning as you come in and call them by name. Now, I tried that not only in school, but I did that in a police station in Albany, Georgia, when Martin Luther King was in jail. The policeman was, well, he weighed about 300 pounds and he was about 6'4". And he had a stick and a gun. And when I went in, he said something pretty nasty and didn't even look up. So when I went out, I remembered something else my father said. look at the name on the policeman's badge. And so I saw his name, and when I went out, I said, "Thank you very much, Sergeant Hamilton." And it took him by surprise that I called him by name. And the next day I went in to see, I had to do that for 12 days. But he and I got to be good friends in 10 days. In fact, in 2 or 3 days. And it changed his life, and it changed my life in many ways, just because I realized how most people, even people who are trained to be mean sometimes, want to be respected. And you start out by respecting them, and they then may or may not respect you, but you never stop respecting them.
Well, I think that's such an important lesson of this book, and something you've certainly demonstrated throughout your life is the willingness to talk and to listen to people who have a different point of view. And that's, I think, a message we could remember now for sure.
It really truly is such valuable every word. We're all just here hanging on your every word, Ambassador Young. This is great. I have a few questions from members of our audience.
Good.
Katie G asks, if you could give this book to any person, who would it be?
I think that, well, I'd be prejudiced toward boys, though it wouldn't necessarily apply, because girls now, I tell you, I'm so proud of the women athletes in every sport. They're excelling. And so I would say that though I learned this at 4 years old, it was equally as important at 40 or at 60 or at 80. And so it's a kind of thing. Well, it's a simple parable, and I'm a preacher too. So Jesus used parables all the time, and it wasn't particularly centered on any age group. It's a good way, a story is a good way to get people to remember an important fact or issue.
And throughout our childhood, you always use stories from your life to teach us lessons. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated it, and it stuck with us.
A follow-up question to that from Sam O. What was it like writing a book together as a father and a daughter?
Oh, she wrote it, but she had listened to me preach it to her or remind her, I guess, since she went to elementary school. So it took a while for us to get it down. And I'd say Scholastic has done a wonderful job with the artwork and the printing, and it's a classic book that I'm very proud to be associated with, and with my baby daughter.
It was a treat for me to write it, because it absolutely is a story that I have heard throughout my life. He has told us this numerous times. And so writing it down gave me the opportunity to go back and hear it again. And it gave me an excuse to call my dad and talk to him. And so I really enjoyed the whole process of writing the book and now sharing it with other people with him. I enjoy working with him.
Oh, thank you. And Katie G asked, what inspired you to tell this story now? Obviously, Ambassador, your whole life, you've had this wonderful story in your pocket. What was it that convinced you that now was the time to finally put it down on paper?
Well, it was Paula that decided, and Paula had been very busy. She's got 3 boys that take up a lot of time, and she's been teaching ever since she came out of Duke University and went to Uganda to teach with Habitat for Humanity. It's kind of hard to get started writing when you're working, 10 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And so I think that well, she can speak for herself, But I think now is the time. And if ever we needed stories of calm and rationality and patience with each other, it's now.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that the time is right for it now, that this is a message that we can really use. But the way that it sort of came about was really, my dad was talking to Scholastic and was meeting with them about something else, I believe his foundation. And he started telling this story because my daddy loves to tell stories. So he started telling this story. And when the author and editor, Andrea Pinkney, heard this story, she said, "You've got to write it down." And fortunately, my dad said, "I don't write children's books, but my daughter does." So we were able to collaborate on it to make it happen.
Wonderful. We have one last question I want to ask, and Ambassador Young, I know you need to move on. John Paul asked, a common practice among movement organizers is to continually sustain a state of anger and outrage, regardless of topic. Anger seems to be a fuel now. What would you say to the movement organizers who use this methodology?
Well, forgive me, but that was never the case in the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King. And it was never the case in our families. Coretta Scott King was at church when she was about 14 or 15 years old, and there was choir practice. And she came home from church to find that her house had been burned flat to the ground. And her father, who was not a particularly well-educated man, but who was a great, brilliant man, understood that anger was not what he wanted his children to remember from this. And so he asked them all to kneel down and pray. And the first thing they did was thank God that they were not in the house and that they were all alive. And the second thing they did was to pray for the sick people in the Ku Klux Klan that felt it necessary to burn their home down. And then he prayed that they would never be bitter or angry toward these people because their hatred was a sickness. And you don't get angry with sick people. And again, you don't get mad, you get smart. And you learn to take the initiative with people. And I made a practice of doing that. I guess I was in demonstrations almost constantly between, well, I started off in 1954, having to deal with the Ku Klux Klan in Thomasville, Georgia. And I continued right on up to Black Lives Matter, you know, and the one thing I kept trying to say to the young people there was that the most powerful demonstration, I still think the most powerful demonstration I know about anywhere in the world was down in Brazil when a ruthless Brazilian police force was literally shooting children on the street. And the mothers went down walking with Archbishop Dom Helder Camara. And they carried with them deliberately the statues of the Virgin Mary. And when the police came toward them, they all knelt down quietly to pray. And the police could not beat them when they were on their knees. And I wish I could share that with the women in Iran right now. It's that hatred begets hatred.
Mm-hmm.
But love and understanding is still the most powerful weapon we have.
Thank you, Ambassador Young. That's a powerful message from our time. We are so honored to have you here tonight. I
But
know that
again,
yep,
the message is don't get mad, get smart.
right. As
Why
Michelle
is
Obama
it that
said, they
these
go low,
people,
you go high.
yeah, why does these people get up so upset when we're not doing anything to hurt them?
Mhm, mhm.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank
thanks a
you.
lot. Bye-bye.
And so to our viewers, whatever questions we have remain, we'll take them at the end. Continue to ask those questions, and Paula is going to continue to talk a little more about the book and share some of that book with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandy. And thank you, Daddy. I enjoyed telling this story so much. I think it has such an important message to give, not only to children, but to adults as well. So I would like to read a little part of it for you. Starting with my father was telling you how his dad took him to see Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics. Well, I'm going to start with that part of the book, and hopefully you'll be able to see the beautiful illustrations
Yes,
by
Paula.
Gordon James.
Paula, I'm
Yes.
just pulling it up. It seems like it had closed, so I'm reopening it.
Okay, that's great. Because these illustrations by Gordon James, award-winning artist, and he used pastels, and they're just so vivid and so alive. So I know that you will enjoy seeing these beautiful illustrations as I read. And those will be up in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and start. The next Saturday, Daddy and I got all dressed up in our Sunday best, and we took the streetcar downtown to the Orpheum Theater for a special treat. We walked around the side of the theater and down an alley to the window marked colored. We bought 2 tickets. Then Daddy took my hand as we climbed and went up the back door, climbing the steps to the balcony to sit in the colored only section. I didn't like that we had to go in through the back and sit in the balcony when we paid the same amount as white folks who went in the front door and sat where they wanted. Once we were inside the theater, I didn't care where we sat. It was beautiful. I looked up and the ceiling was covered with gold, red, and blue shapes. Suddenly, the lights went out. The projector flashed on and the loud voice boomed out through the speakers. A movie tone newsreel flickered on the screen. It was highlights from the 1936 Olympics in Germany. There was that man called Hitler with his funny little mustache, and a stadium full of people who stood up to salute him. They looked just like those men outside of Aunt Delia's window. The athletes in the film ran, jumped, and threw as the crowds applauded. The best part of the whole film was Jesse Owens, a runner who looked just like me, winning over and over and over again. I cheered as Jesse pulled away from the pack in the 100-meter dash and won a gold medal. I shouted as Jesse flew through the air and leaped over the sand to nab a gold medal in the long jump. I screamed as Jesse raced past the others in the 200 meters for yet another gold. I roared as Jesse took the lead and passed the baton to help bring the Americans victory and win gold again in the 4x100-meter relay. I saw Jesse Owens run, head up, back straight, eyes focused, on to victory, to win 4 gold medals in front of a man who thought people like me were not as good as white people. The next day, I couldn't wait to get back to the playground. I ran like Jesse Owens to see my friends.
I told them all about the movie theater and how Hitler thought white people were the best, and how Jesse Owens proved him wrong by running faster and jumping farther than everybody else. Jimmy Ray, Norby, JD, and I ran and ran and ran that day like we were in the Olympics. And nobody cared what color we were. After seeing Jesse win, I decided I would play harder, work harder, and try harder than ever to be the best I could be. And I would show the world that it doesn't matter what color you are. What matters is what you do. All people deserve a chance to go for the gold, just like Jesse. And that's the end. And there's a little the back matter showing me and my dad at a demonstration and his family, and of course, Jesse Owens. So that is our story. And I think that there are several really important messages in this book. It's about doing your best. It is about not letting other people's opinions of you determine who you are or what you're going to do, because there will always be people who want to keep you down for one reason or another. And being focused on yourself and doing the best that you can is a really important message that I want young children to hear. And so I am just really proud to be able to share this story, my dad's story, with kids, because I think it inspired me so much and absolutely guided my father's life for 90 years. He just celebrated his 90th birthday, and to be able to do the things that he has done in life, I think a huge part of that was learning to respect other people and listen to other people, and to not focus on other people's opinions of you. And as he says, to not get mad, but to just get smart.
All right. Sorry, having some technical difficulties. So I think that you're ready to perhaps take some questions.
Sure, that would be great.
Wonderful. And just remember, folks, you can ask any questions. Just go ahead to the Q&A, click on the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen to ask a question. This question comes from Josh F., who would like to know how long it took to write the book.
Oh, that's a great question, Josh. It took me a few months to write it. I think, I wrote the story as I remembered it. I wrote it down, and then I would talk to my dad about it and ask him other parts of the story. But a really important part of this process was working with an editor who would read the story and give me feedback on if things were not clear or if they weren't sure what happened next. And so she would ask me questions and she would make suggestions. And, we went through that process for a few months of just trading the manuscript back and forth. And I think it absolutely made it better to have someone else's input to help you tell your story in a clear way.
Great. And the question from Sam O., who wondered if you had any say in the illustrations for the book. Tell me about that process.
Right. So this was a surprise to me, Sam, when I wrote my first book, that the writer doesn't usually get a say in the illustrator. I was very lucky both times that the publishers picked such amazing illustrators, and Gordon James just did a beautiful job with this. He took photographs from my father's family, from my father's childhood, and he actually uses models to do his sketches. So it was very interesting to me to hear his process of studying the pictures, but then using real kids to really capture the vivid imagery that he puts in this book.
Wonderful. Sam, also kind of as a follow-up question, do you have a favorite page or a favorite spread?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, I think it's the cover. And if you open the cover, it's one huge print and it's just gorgeous. And I love seeing Jesse run with the kids and my dad up front. And I think that really captures the message of the story too, is that you can do whatever you set your mind to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Friday is wondering if you could share some personal experiences that you may have had in this day and age that might have inspired you to share the important message in this story. And also they wanted to say wonderful book and they loved it.
Oh, thank you very much. I think that I'm a first grade teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I always use books to really help children understand messages, difficult topics. And I spent 20 years teaching civil rights to first graders. And some people think that that's a kind of a difficult topic. And how can you talk to 6-year-olds about it? But using stories really helps them to understand. And, the thing about a first grader is they absolutely understand what's fair. And so when you talk about inequality and injustice as not being fair, that people were not given the same amount, were not given the same opportunities, then they can absolutely grasp those concepts. And so I love just being able to share these messages in a story about a kid and looking at my dad as a kid, as a child, and how, racism impacted him and how he overcame it, I think just provides a wonderful model for children.
Absolutely. Daisy asks, what do you think that getting smart might look like in today's cultural landscape?
That's a good one. I do think a big part of it is listening to different points of view. We have gotten so caught up in our little silos, and whether it's on social media or in your social network, you're surrounding, we tend to surround ourselves with people who agree with us. And so you don't get different points of view, and you don't get an opportunity to argue a different side of the story. But it is so important for us to really start to listen to people who disagree with us. And the only way we're going to be able to find any compromise is to first listen to what the other view is, and then we can work towards something in the middle.
This is just my own personal follow-up, because obviously we have a lot of teachers here attending this event. And obviously, we know in the news that a lot of teachers have been getting pushback from parents about some of the things that they share in their classroom. Do you have any wisdom to impart in that regard?
I would say just keep telling the truth. I think it is so essential for us to tell the real stories, to tell our history from different points of view. And these are the facts, and we have to share those facts. I think it was, if we don't learn our history, then we're going to repeat it. And so it's important for us to understand what has happened. And when I talk to children about the civil rights movement and racism and terrible things that happened, I am always very deliberate about explaining that there were some white people who were racist, and there were so many whites who joined with African Americans to fight against injustice. And you find that in our protests today, they are not just one group of people, that there are lots of people, very different kinds of people coming together to fight for each other, because that's the only way we're going to survive. And so, you don't have to worry about making one group the bad guy, because there are always good guys too. So just celebrate those stories as well. But please keep telling the truth and teaching the truth.
Yes, yes, yes. And we've had some lovely messages here from teachers, from Susan, who says she works with pre-K through 8th grade students, and she purchased your book and can't wait to share it. We have Cami, who says we miss you at GDS.
Yummy.
She asks, how have lower school children responded to this beautiful story?
Well, it's been very positive so far. I've, gotten good responses. I think, people love learning about Jesse Owens. He was an amazing character, someone who really overcame odds for great success. And I think my dad has done tremendous things in his life. And I think, seeing how he used this example to inspire him, then I'm hoping we can inspire another generation of great achievers.
Yes, yes, yes. Are there any other stories that you would hope to tell someday as a father-daughter duo?
Oh, I do, because really my father has so many stories. I was trying to get him to tell the story about how he would walk to school each day. And, he was a little scrawny kid, and he was also much younger than all the kids in his class because he started school so early. And, they'd beat him up and take his lunch money until he said, wait a minute, what if we put all our money together? And, he had the most money, but everybody had a couple coins. He said, let's put all our money together and we'll go to the grocery store and we'll buy a big thing of salami and a loaf of bread and we'll feed everyone. And so, he started his diplomacy career very early out of necessity. But it has worked for him. Let's find a way to work together is always going to be the best solution.
That's a great message for today as well.
So, yeah, so there are many of his stories I'd love to write.
Yes, yes. One more question from Friday, who asked, are there other authors that have inspired your work or creatives in the world that you've looked up to?
Oh, there are many. Just for her beautiful poetry, Maya Angelou has always been a huge hero of mine. But Carol Boston Weatherford is an amazing writer, and her new book, Unspeakable, I think is just such a powerful, powerful story. And when I saw it, I thought, how can you write a children's book about the Tulsa massacre? And she did it so beautifully because she celebrated the successes but also told the truth. So, but there are many others out there that I love to read. I love reading children's books.
Yes, well, we do here as well. And yours is certainly a very valuable addition to our shelves. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And please pass that on to your father as well. It was wonderful to have him, such an honor. So thank you. We are going to wrap up, but thank you all for your questions, everyone. The link to purchase Just Like Jesse Owens is still in the chat, so we hope you will get your own copy. We've also got lots of copies here in the store for you if you'd like to come by, and we can also show you some of the other wonderful books that were mentioned. We always are glad to help you find just the right book for whatever you're looking for. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was
yes.
great.
Thank you. Keep reading.